Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Lata Venkatesh. Today on Indianomics, we are trying to understand the recent order from the government which requires importers of laptops and PCs to get a license. The goal of the government is laudable. India imports, as of the last year, 5.3 billion worth of laptops and PCs. That's in FY23. That's around 8 million pieces. And over 90% of that came from China. The government wants these made in India. But the worry of the user industries like IT companies or the GCCs, the Global Captive Centers, is will they be faced with shortage in terms of supply of laptops and PCs? Will they also get exactly the brand and quality they want? Now, the domestic industry is answering that they believe they and the multinational laptop makers can scale up thanks to the PLI scheme. Now, to understand more of everyone's point of view, I have with me Megha Chawla, partner and capability sourcing leader at Bain & Company, Tarun Pathak, the research director at Counterpoint Research, it's a think tank, Ashish Agarwal, VP and head of public policy at NASSCOM, and Saurabh Gupta, CFO of Dixon Technologies. So we have a good mix of users and producers and perhaps think tanks as well. Gentlemen and Megha, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let me start with NASSCOM because Ashish, you all represent one of the largest user industries. Everyone uses laptops and PCs, but your constituency would be the single largest buyer. Were you all consulted? What are your misgivings, if any?
So frankly, this came in as a bit of a surprise, and typically, an import cycle for a company with this license requirement. So what it does is that now it's in the restricted category. We fear that the import cycle could go to something between 3 to 5 months from the time a company decides and starts negotiating to getting that item imported. So that itself is a big stretch, 3 to 5 months, assuming everything gets imported. The one big area of concern is also, a lot of the industries in the special economic zones, and these are STPI units also. Now, we know for a fact that under the STPI framework and also the SEZ rules, which is for STPI, the foreign trade policy, there should be no requirement for this notification to be applicable for STPI units and the SEZs. Now, but when we are talking to the local authorities, whether it's the STPI authorities or the custom authorities on the ground or the development commissioners, we are not getting a consistent view on that. So while the law in our mind is clear, it may lead to different interpretations on the ground, and that could impact a certain part of the industry. And then when you go beyond this, I think there are, like you mentioned about the manufacturing in India, and I think it's a matter of between the cup and the lip, right? What is that split that we might see? For example, if you look at the data center industry, a lot of the high-end servers are currently not manufactured in India, so they're just not there. And we have seen commitments, there are news reports that it's going to happen. But again, it's a matter of, what happens in the transition. And then finally, if you go to the last point, I think, the entire idea of import licenses was still now on restricted items. And now it covers everything. So we need a real overhaul of this process of import, because when you're going to look at it in this level of scale, any rejection of application or any of these other things which can delay the process could actually have a significant impact. So we are talking to the government and we are examining the situation, but it's something to be concerned about for
okay. Let me just quickly get two more things corrected, clarified. When you say STPs, software parks and SEZs, at the moment, are they manufacturing or assembling enough laptops and PCs? If this is clarified, will it be a big relief?
So I'm not even talking about manufacturing. I'm talking about the units who are operating in the special economic zone and STPIs who are importing laptops and units.
Oh, whether it's applicable to them.
Yeah, so right now, as per our understanding of foreign trade policy and the SEZ rules, this notification does not apply to them. But the ground authorities are having different views.
Okay.
So that's one area of clarification.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll need a lot more clarification from you all. Just one more thing, Saurabh. There is this HSN 8471. That is the code. All products that come under HSN 8471. Is it that, you can, if it is 8472 or 70, are those computers, I mean, I don't know, I just don't know how the law works, but are those computers, can you sidestep the law by changing the code?
As far as I understand, I think so. That 8471 code that you're talking about, HSN code, is quite comprehensive, and one can't change it and get those laptops and tablets in some other category. Of course, yeah, there will be some kind of relaxation which I think government will give even post November 1 till the time the capacities come in. Okay. But my sense is those other codes should not.
Okay. No, I was just thinking with a devious legal mind whether there is some leeway. Megha, now to come to you, since you've helped set up a lot of global captive centers. For those of you who are not familiar with this abbreviation, global captive centers have become global capability centers. You must have just heard a lot of the large banks, NatWest, Lloyd, Citi, Morgan, all of them setting up large institutions in India so that the middle office work of their parent, including, not just software, but risk, compliance, analytics, so much of the middle office is moving to India. Now, Megha, are your clients worried?
Lata, not yet. Not yet. What we're seeing is you've seen the data, right? In the last year, actually it's been brewing over the last 2-3 years, but in the last year, what we've seen is that there has been a surge in interest in GCC. We are actually at any point having tens of conversations with our clients on how can they enter, how can they scale up. This has not yet cast a shadow on the GCC opportunity. That's for two reasons, right? The first is there's just a lot of, right now everybody's waiting for the modalities to unfold. I think folks are figuring out, how is this import license going to work? What is the implication on timing, on cost, on, will there be more runway over here? So that's number one. The second one is, folks do realize that this is going to impact ease of doing business. But if you look at how customers are making decisions on India and GCC, they're looking at 5 or 6 big criteria, right? They're looking at, geopolitical certainty, economic certainty, talent pool availability, depth, stability, cost of living. They look at infrastructure, and then finally they look at ease of doing business. Your laptops are one component of your cost and one component of your ease of doing business. By no means trivial, it's important, but there's a one-time cost. The only thing I'm trying to say is what our clients are seeing, the way they're looking at these decisions, these are long-term decisions. They're looking at the capability and cost advantage that they're going to have over over a undefined period. Yes. This is 10, 15 years. So does this create noise, confusion? Absolutely. Does this create uncertainty and reluctance on GCCs? We're not seeing that yet. Having said that, we are waiting that over the next 2-3 months, things are going to unfold, and it'll all see, we would expect that the modalities here are keeping in mind the sheer impact on business, on the consumer, and hence are actually easing the pain while, taking into account all other considerations that have been behind this ruling.
Okay. The fair point. I'm just asking the first 2 questions to Megha and to Ashish from NASSCOM, simply because we must remember on a macro level, software exports, services exports, software and non-software services exports have greatly bailed India out. We are almost a current account balanced country in FY23, or at least the last quarter of FY23, simply because services exports have grown so much. And if that is crucially dependent on electronic goods like computers, we better be worried even on a macro level. We cannot afford to disturb those numbers. Tarun, will we disturb those numbers? Incidentally, Counterpoint Research is the database and the think tank, go-to think tank for this. Do you think, what is your sense in terms of what is the ask of imports? I am told 5.3 billion was the last year, FY23. Can this get seriously disrupted if import licenses are needed?
Thank you, Lata. So let me break this in terms of numbers. So if we put together the entire category as of now, we talk about laptop PCs, about $8 billion, you add tablets on top of it, then another 1 billion, and then servers, another 2 billion. So now what is happening is we are largely dependent on imports on this category. So if you say, so one is assembly, which is only 35% as of now, And one is import of the components that goes as high as 90%, right? There is hardly any localization of the component that is happening. So if you go into this PLI 2.0, you have this set of the different components that are aimed to localize and that you need to do it mandatory one per year, which shows that there is a clear-cut implication on the localization of some of the components that goes into this. Another interesting point here is we are talking about semiconductors on a whole in India, right? And the value of the semiconductor that goes into these categories is even higher. I'm talking about per unit value. Yeah. So that will be very interesting to keep an eye on how we can reduce the trade deficit and localize some of these numbers.
That's a different point, Tarun. Semiconductors is a different vertical. At the moment, I think what the government is trying to do is get the laptops assembled here. Like we have succeeded with phones, the hope is that that's why the PLI is announced. So I'll just come back to you in a minute. Let me get Saurabh on this. There is a grand PLI scheme announced, 17,000 crore of subsidies. The last date is August 31st. We are given to understand there are 44 people who have put their hat in the ring so far. I don't know if my numbers are right. You tell me. If the licenses are given or if the PLI is cleared very quickly, do you think that a shortage is not at all on the anvil, Saurabh?
Yeah, so Lata, you're absolutely right. I think so. The response to the PLI has been very encouraging. There should be 40 to 44 players, and the last date is 31st August, and the government should give the approvals in say next 30 to 45 days. My sense is post November 1, the government is actually presently today is engaging with the industry, with the brand owners, with the EMS players. My sense is even after post November 1, they will give licenses to the industry so that there are no shortages, because they also realize that for any EMS player or for a brand player to set up a manufacturing capacity of a large order will take 6 to 8 months to ramp up and stabilize and reach to a level of first level of manufacturing, which is basically the panel assembly and the PCBA, and then the next piece of backward integration follows in the years after. So my sense is the only meaningful revenues on purely India manufacturing should start to happen from next financial year. This year, even after 1st November, I think so government will give those licenses so that the brand owners can continue to import and there are no shortages to that effect.
Okay. Very quickly, Saurabh, is this like a great time for people like you all and others who are looking to have joint ventures with the Dells and the Acers of the world? Should we see a burst of these kinds of JVs?
Yeah. So Lata, we are already manufacturing for Acer. And we have been manufacturing for the last 18 months now. Yes. So our volumes in Acer will now go up. And we are also in discussion with a very large global brand who has a very large market share globally as well as in India. And hopefully we should be able to conclude with them in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And we should be able to set up those capacities in the next 6 to 7 months. So clearly it's a large opportunity. So unlike mobile manufacturing, where the government also put a tariff barrier, now IT hardware product was basically an ITA 1 product, where you can't put tariff barriers. So the government resorted to this non-tariff barriers to trigger that domestic manufacturing. So overall, I think so it's a large opportunity for India and also for players like us.
Okay. Well, I have to take a break, but very quickly, Ashish, is the IT industry worried that, FY24 or 25, you can have a problem with, hiring, changing your computers? Is this a big thing that's sitting on their head?
So, Lata, I would concur with Megha there. I think it is definitely an ease of doing business issue, but nothing more than that at this stage. And obviously, there is anticipation in terms of how it will actually play out. But as on date, I think this is not something which is therefore the industry is sweating on too much. But yeah, definitely working over.
All right. Okay. So at least as far as the stock market in India Inc. is concerned, IT industry not terribly worried, more ease of doing business issue. And the EMD companies, the electronic manufacturers, waiting for joint venture participation. So seems good for India Inc. We have to take a break, but after that we are going to discuss how should the license rules be designed so that it doesn't become a pain in the neck in terms of ease of doing business. Back in a jiffy. Welcome back to Indianomics. We've been discussing the government's new rule that laptops and PCs can be imported only with a license. The discussion has been with Megha Chawla of Bain and Company, Tarun Pathak of Counterpoint, Ashish Agarwal of NASSCOM, and Saurabh Gupta of Dixon. Gentlemen and Megha, thank you very much for your patience. I get your point that you made earlier before the break, that this is going to be an ease of doing business problem. Ashish, how would you have them rewrite the rules of licensing? Do you want it to be given quickly? Do you want them to speed up at least in November till the production picks up? What do you want from the authorities?
So a very high-level feedback that has gone from us is that there needs to be a little more sense of demand and supply, so that this transition to the new regime doesn't cause unintended outcome where firms are struggling, and that's one feedback. But if you go back into the nuts and bolts, I think first level is just a on-ground instruction to the field formations that for STPI units and SEZ units, this notification doesn't apply. So that's point number one. Second is that right now the import licenses for restricted items, these are, you have to take port-wise licenses. So that's problematic. So can we have a process where the license is centralized, and can we have timelines where the license can be given in, let's say, 1 week time rather than the anticipated time if you compare to restricted items, which is much more longer. And then also what happens when the application is rejected? So currently, because the rejections are for restricted items and it's a minuscule set of stuff, and people can just manage over them. But when you're doing it as a default, then what happens? So I think some of these things are important, and also there is a kind of a issue, right? Because a server is a server, but a server can also be connected to a larger machine and become part of the capital good. Similarly, a high-end laptop. So how do you get this exemption where a laptop or server is part of a capital good?
Yes.
So that they could clarify it to say that all capital goods are exempt. So I think there's a list of such items. We are in discussion with the Director General of Foreign Trade and the IT Ministry, and hopefully they will look into this.
I think that's a very important point that you're making, and that puzzled me as well. Among the items that this license doesn't cover, you can, as part of your baggage rules, get one laptop if you have gone abroad. You can buy from the Amazons of the world. One unit. These restrictions don't apply provided you pay the customs duty. But the biggest one was any laptop or unit connected to a capital good is also exempted. And as you point out, a lot of it can be explained in that. Megha, did you encounter this? Have you legally approached the government through any of the SROs?
We have not, Lata. We have not. I think I agree with. I think Ashish put it across very well. There's just a need for clarity. What is in, what is out, and this is based on sort of what's happening on the ground rather than just sort of written in isolation from. I think consulting businesses is absolutely crucial here. Businesses and any other actually essential services that require laptops, to be clear. That clarity, I think the process needs to be very transparent. Ashish spoke about the fast tracking. I think it's really important that we have predefined timelines and accountability around those timelines. The best case is just provide more flex even beyond November. But, I understand there are several considerations at play. Let's make this easier for business. Let's create absolute clarity on what to expect, because, then businesses can recalibrate their timelines. I think it's the uncertainty that's creating more angst rather than, an extra 3 days or an extra 5 days. Right now, we don't know. Is it an extra 7 days? When is new capacity going to come up? I think all of that is owed to business, right? This is the entire services, the entire knowledge services, technology services sector is dependent on this, which is a huge driver of the economy today. So I think you just owe them that clarity.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm only saying IT and GCCs, but every bank, every media company, we are all so crucially dependent in terms of the number of laptops and PCs and other equipment that we need. Saurabh, what's your sense? As Tarun was very correctly pointing out, it's not just the assembling, it's the various other parts also that need to be manufactured in India. And just an assembly will mean barely 1% in terms of margin. Do you think that there is this whole world that is opening up for you because the HPs and the Dells of the world will want to capture this consumption market?
Yeah, so the way the PLI is being structured is that you get an incentive both on the final assembly and localization. So localization is actually mandatory.
Okay.
You have to localize other components like a PCBA, like a display, a battery, charger, those kind of things have to be localized, and then only you get that incentive. So we believe that every industry in the initial days requires some kind of a handholding from the government, and this is the kind of step that has been taken by the government. And once you achieve a scale and size, then the component ecosystem also evolves. Like the way we are seeing in the mobile industry right now, the value addition is significantly increasing year on year. Of course, the non-semiconductor part, but yeah, that is increasing. And clearly we see that in next 2-3 years, those kind of component or the value addition in a laptop or a tablet will also go up in India.
Okay. Tarun, I've taken your point that semiconductors is a vertical by itself. I mean, there barely, I guess, we will do the packaging and the testing first. It's a long process. It's a difficult process. But among the others, do you see, significantly this number of 5.3 billion coming down? What's your experience in other countries? Can this be quickly set up?
I think so. India has a capability. So if you look at in terms of the localization, we take this example from the mobile. So first of all, you localize the low-hanging components with chargers, with cables, then housing. I think here you can also take the very similar size. First of all, there is a assembling that happens on each and every component. Even on the camera module, memory, you need assembling, right? So in that sense, I think we need to first identify the components that can be localized. I think the housing is a big part of these categories. And then if you look at the display, even the display assembly, display is almost like 50% of the BOM in some of these components, in some of these segments. And that needs to be looked into. And then comes the memory. So I think that can be done, obviously, over the years. That's why I think the clarification on the timeline of this particular notification would have been very important if you had looked into what's the kind of localization we have, what is the kind of the assembly, because we have currently lines in the country that can make almost a half of the production, a half of the requirement that we have. So we do not have even enough lines to make enough or assemble enough pieces right now in the country. So that needs to have been looked into. And one point I think we are missing here is the second-hand industry. If you look at second-hand is a big market. I was there in the Nano place a couple of days, and the gentleman was telling me by the time this notification has been out, our sales in the second-hand PC has almost become double, which means that
people are accumulating.
Exactly.
Take your point. Yeah. I expect a bunch of proactive imports, and as this is really a new point that's coming to the table. Second-hand industry that will go through the roof simply because you fear there will be a shortage. Saurabh, just finally, very quick point. As Tarun says, assembling should get priority, right? Yes, we have to localize, but since the license is sitting on your head, assembling will get priority over everything else?
Yeah. So assembly, the final assembly, both the PCBA and the final assembly will get prioritized. And the next 6 to 8 months, industry will be absolutely geared up, and the industry has the requisite skill, bandwidth, and the capability to do that. And we are absolutely up for it. So we will be setting up large capacity in the next 6 to 8 months.
No doubt you have stocked it very well after the announcement. In any case, thank you very much for giving us more clarity on this issue. Ashish Agarwal, Megha Chawla, Tarun Pathak, and Saurabh Gupta. Thank you very much for joining in this conversation. There is a conspiracy theory going that actually the government perhaps started this bogey so that more people will apply in the PLI and the localization becomes a success. Be that as it may, they can be flexible, and that November 1 can also be up for renegotiation. And of course, what the most important takeaway is that the rules of licensing should be extremely pragmatic, and the timeline 1 week rather than 3 months. And even when the licensing is not given, by default, you should be allowed to import. Rules like these will make for ease of doing business. We wrap up on this very important edition of Indianomics. Thank you very much for watching.